My name is David. I live at 210 Rivington Street, and I've lived there for 15 years. My building was recently purchased by Sammy Mafar, and I have become a tenant leader in my building, fighting for the rights of the tenants in the building while the renovation and takeover of the building has been going on.
Let's go.
So my apartment is rent stabilized, which means that the rent can only go up a certain amount per year based on an amount that is voted on by a board that the city runs. And for me, that's been very important. I've lived in the building for 15 years because I work in the arts, and my income can fluctuate greatly from month to month. And so knowing that my rent will be controlled and cannot jump hundreds and hundreds of dollars every year has been a big factor in allowing me to continue to live in New York City. There's also a lot of families. This is a predominantly Puerto Rican, Dominican, and African American neighborhood, and there's a lot of those families there's people in my building that have lived in my building their entire life. And to think that people like that are just going to get kicked out on the street because some man wants to be able to charge 3 times as much for the apartment that they live in is just sickening.
Let's go.
And what has happened with the building is our building through time has been turned to about half rent stabilized and half market apartments. And so when Sammy Mafar came in, the first thing they did was they jacked up the rents in all the market apartments drastically. So half the people in the building moved out within a month. I did not even know that it had been sold. I called my current landlord about a repair issue, and they informed me that the building had been sold and it wasn't their problem. And I asked them who's the new landlord, and they wouldn't tell me. So using my online resources like Property Shark and Google, I was able to track down who he was and what his company was, which then led me to articles online about Ludlow Street and what had happened at Ludlow Street and the horrible conditions that the people at Ludlow Street had faced after their building had been bought. And so I immediately got very concerned, and I contacted some of my friends and neighbors in the building and let them know that the building had been sold and who this new owner was. And we jumped into high gear to try to see what we could do to protect ourselves. And then people started getting contacted by people claiming to be working for the landlord, but they were actually part of a tenant relocation company. A lot of phone calls, some harassing phone calls, supposedly offering very large figure buyouts to tenants, which turned out to not be true. And we believe in an effort to sort of divide and conquer the people that were left in the building so that people would not talk to each other, would think that they had private information, that they were trying to separate us so that we wouldn't communicate. But what we did was the exact opposite, where we immediately reached out to each other, started telling each other what was going on. And we got in touch with Brandon at Cooper Square, and who came to our building, and we had some meetings and talked about forming a tenants association. We also had a meeting with one of the tenants from Ludlow Street who told us the whole story of everything that they had been through and really let us know that we had to be ready to protect ourselves immediately and start getting as much knowledge as possible. The next big phase was renovating the public areas of the building, which they began doing in September, completely ripping all the plaster out of the walls, making a big mess, and doing all this without the proper permits. And so one of the things that I learned was a lot about the permitting process and how to look up permits online, how to see if permits are really filed in the proper way. And so right away we were able to start complaining to the city and using contacts at Cooper Square to get inspectors to come. And within 2 weeks, we were able to get a stop work order put on the building. We've had a lot of problems with dust, debris. I personally have asthma, so it certainly has exacerbated my asthma. People have had allergic reactions because of things that are being dug up in the building. Fortunately, my apartment is not adjacent to any of the apartments that are being gotten renovated, but tenants who are adjacent to those have had multiple ceiling collapses, walls punctured, construction noise, and again, debris, dust, constant dust, one tenant, she has to basically entirely clean her apartment every 3 days because it just gets completely filled with dust. She's been having allergic reactions. She's been having breathing problems. So up there on the 5th floor, that's one of the apartments that they're renovating. And we just, while we were shooting this, we looked up and realized that they haven't covered these windows, and it's supposed to rain this weekend, and that's going to be open all weekend. And my neighbor who I'm friends with lives underneath that apartment, and she's already had her ceiling broken through 6 times since they started that construction. And what's going to stop all this water from coming in and flooding her apartment? So it's another time to call the city and file a complaint. In some ways, it hasn't taken a lot of work for us to do this. I mean, on an individual basis, I think each of us has done our little bit. It hasn't been a full-time job. It's been just taking a little bit of time here and there to go online, to see what's going on, to call the city, to file a complaint periodically, and just a little bit of effort has had a huge impact on what's happened in our building, and I think has prevented a much worse situation like what happened on Ludlow Street from developing